Right in the middle of her wedding vows, my ex-wife stopped. The officiant turned toward 150 guests, and she screamed my name like I'd just walked through the chapel doors carrying a foreclosure notice. Champagne glasses froze halfway to lips. Heads whipped around. People whispered, "Is Rick here?" I wasn't. I was 900 miles away, sitting on a wraparound porch in Charleston, South Carolina, sipping sweet tea and watching shrimp boats drift across the harbor. They all thought I'd ruined her day. Truth is, Monica ruined her whole life the moment she chose a man who couldn't afford his own wedding ring. My name is Richard Sullivan, Rick to everyone who matters. I'm 47 years old, born and raised in Austin, Texas, where the music's loud, the barbecue's real, and people still shake hands on deals worth six figures. For 25 years, I worked my way up to regional sales director for Apex Industrial Equipment, Southwest Territory, the kind of job where you build relationships over decades, where a man's word still means something, and where due diligence isn't just a phrase, it's survival. My clients used to joke, Rick Sullivan could sell ice makers to Eskimos, but he'd research their power grid first. Monica, my ex-wife, never appreciated that thoroughness. She called it obsessive. On bad days, she'd throw around words like paranoid and controlling. She wanted spontaneity, excitement, the kind of romance that looked good in movies but crumbled under the weight of real-life responsibilities. After 23 years of marriage, she decided she wanted more than what we'd built together, more than the steady paycheck, the reliable mortgage payments, the kind of partnership that weathers storms instead of chasing them. She wanted passion, adventure, someone who made her feel young again, and apparently that someone looked a whole lot like Brandon Hayes. Brandon was 8 years younger than me, drove a leased BMW that gleamed like a promise he couldn't keep, and had the kind of tan that comes from spending more time poolside than in actual business meetings. He called himself a real estate investment consultant, which in Austin usually means someone who flips houses with other people's money and talks about passive income at coffee shops. Monica lit up around him like a Christmas tree plugged into a nuclear reactor. She started talking about vision boards and manifesting abundance, concepts that sounded impressive until you looked at the math behind them. She called Brandon her soulmate, her perfect match, the man who finally understood her dreams of something bigger than suburban Austin. The irony wasn't lost on me. The same week Monica accused me of being too cautious with our finances, I discovered that Brandon had more foreclosure notices than a bank during the 2008 crisis. Thorough men read the fine print. Brandon apparently never bothered to learn there was fine print to read. Our marriage didn't end with screaming matches or thrown dishes. It ended with the quiet realization that we wanted fundamentally different things. Monica wanted the excitement of uncertainty. I wanted the security of knowing our bills would be paid next month. She saw my caution as limitation. I saw her impulsiveness as reckless. The divorce proceedings moved faster than Austin traffic at 2 a.m. When both parties agree to dissolve a marriage, Texas law doesn't require much ceremony. No long court battles, no bitter custody fights since we never had children. No complex asset division because Monica had already made it clear she didn't want any part of our ordinary life. She took her car, a silver Honda Accord she'd always complained was too practical. She took her jewelry, most of which I'd bought for anniversaries and birthdays over the years. She took whatever remained in the joint savings account she'd been gradually emptying to fund Brandon's various investment opportunities. I kept the house she'd called too suburban for someone with vision. And I was perfectly fine with that arrangement. I like suburban. Suburban means good schools nearby, even if we never use them. It means property values that hold steady, neighbors who notice when something's not right, and the kind of quiet that lets you think clearly about what matters. But I made sure our financial separation was cleaner than a Marine's inspection-ready footlocker. I closed every joint account, severed every shared credit line, canceled every jointly held credit card, and built a legal firewall so comprehensive it could have protected Fort Knox. I didn't take more than the law allowed, but I made damn sure that not a single penny of my future would be tied to whatever financial disasters her new life might bring. The paperwork alone took 3 weeks. Bank forms, credit bureau notifications, insurance policy updates, beneficiary changes, mortgage refinancing to remove her name from the deed. It was methodical work, the kind that requires patience and attention to detail. The kind of work that separates men who plan for the future from men who hope someone else will handle the complications. My first quiet victory came when those final papers were signed and notarized. Sitting in my lawyer's office on a Tuesday afternoon, watching Monica scrawl her signature across documents that legally severed 2.5 decades of shared financial responsibility, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Stillness. Pure, clean stillness. The kind that settles in your chest when the arguing stops, and you realize you can finally hear yourself think again. No more debates about money. No more explanations about why I reviewed contracts before signing them. No more defending the choices that had kept us financially stable while her friends struggled with debt. For the first time in months, I could breathe without measuring each word for its potential to start an argument. 3 weeks after the divorce finalized, Apex. Industrial equipment offered me something I hadn't expected, a fresh start disguised as a promotion. They needed someone with my experience to handle East Coast expansion, someone who understood both relationship building and market analysis. The position was based out of Charleston, South Carolina, with the territory stretching from Virginia down to Georgia. Charleston. I'd heard about it, but never had reason to visit. Historic, coastal, refined in a way that Austin never tried to be. The kind of city where people move slowly, not because they were lazy, but because they understood that some things couldn't be rushed. The signing bonus alone was enough to make the decision easy, but the real appeal was simpler. 900 miles between me and whatever disaster Monica was building with Brandon. I accepted the position on a Thursday and started planning my exit from Texas. 23 years of marriage leaves traces everywhere. Joint memberships, shared subscriptions, couples friends who suddenly don't know which side to choose. Untangling a life takes longer than building one, but it's necessary work if you want to start clean. My sister Patricia helped me pack. She'd never liked Monica, though she'd been too polite to say so until the divorce papers were signed. That woman never appreciated what she had, Patricia said, wrapping my coffee mugs in newspaper. You're better off without someone who thinks stability is boring. Patricia's husband, James, was more direct. Monica always acted like she was settling for you instead of grateful for you. Now she gets to find out what settling actually looks like. He loaded boxes into my truck with the efficiency of someone who'd helped friends escape bad situations before. The drive from Austin to Charleston took 2 days. I could have made it in one long push, but I wanted time to think, to let Texas fade in the rearview mirror mile by mile. I spent the night in a Hampton Inn outside Birmingham, Alabama, eating room service and watching the local news, feeling like a man between lives. Charleston welcomed me with humidity that wrapped around you like a warm blanket, and architecture that suggested money earned slowly, over generations, instead of borrowed quickly for appearances. My rental house sat on a quiet street lined with live oaks draped in Spanish moss, the kind of trees that had been growing for longer than most cities had existed. The house itself was simple. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a kitchen that looked out on a small garden where someone had planted azaleas and camellias. But the front porch was perfect, wide enough for a rocking chair and a small table, facing east to catch the morning light that turned everything golden during those first few minutes after sunrise. I established routines quickly because routines create stability, and stability was what I needed after months of emotional turbulence. Coffee on the porch at 6:30, reading industry reports while watching the neighborhood wake up. Work at the Apex Regional Office, where my new colleagues respected experience more than they questioned my decision to relocate. Dinner at home, usually something simple I could prepare, while listening to jazz on a radio that picked up stations from Savannah and Atlanta. For 3 months, Charleston worked its quiet magic. The pace was different here, slower but not lazy, thoughtful rather than rushed. Business relationships developed over long lunches instead of hurried coffee meetings. Clients took time to explain their operations, their challenges, their long-term goals. The kind of conversations that build trust and repeat business over decades. My territory was performing ahead of projections. Equipment sales that might have taken months to close in other markets were finalizing within weeks because I was dealing with people who valued thoroughness over flash, substance over style. The exact opposite of everything Monica had claimed to want. I didn't think about Monica at all during those first 3 months. Not during morning coffee, not during client meetings, not during the quiet evenings when Charleston's church bells marked the passing hours. She had become part of a previous life, filed away with other experiences that had shaped me, but no longer defined me. Then one afternoon, while I was reviewing client proposals at a cafe on King Street, my phone buzzed with a notification I wasn't expecting. Facebook. Monica had tagged me in a post, something that hadn't happened since before our separation. The photo showed her and Brandon standing in front of Hill Country Resort, both grinning like lottery winners instead of two people standing on what I suspected was a financial sinkhole. She wore an engagement ring that probably cost more than Brandon's monthly income, assuming he had monthly income. The caption read, "Finally found my soulmate. Some people settle for ordinary, but true love finds a way. Blessed plus upgrade. Complete new beginnings." The comment section was exactly what I'd expected from Austin's social media. "You deserve this happiness. So glad you found a real man. Sometimes you have to kiss a few frogs before you find your prince." Our former friends, the couples we'd socialized with for years, celebrating Monica's upgrade like they'd never met the man she'd been married to for over 2 decades. I set the phone down, took a slow sip of coffee, and smiled to myself. People forget that thorough men, paranoid men, as Monica would say, have quiet advantages. We research, we verify, we notice patterns that others miss completely. So, while everyone else saw her perfect new beginning, I saw the foundation cracks that would bring the whole structure down. Brandon wasn't the prince in this fairy tale. He was the wolf in expensive clothes, and Monica was about to find out that Instagram posts don't pay mortgages. I knew I wasn't going to their wedding. I certainly wasn't going to crash it dramatically like some rejected ex-husband in a bad movie. That wasn't my style, and besides, I had something better in mind. Something that would let the truth speak for itself, while I maintained a solid alibi 900 miles away, sipping sweet tea and watching Charleston Harbor. All it needed was the right delivery method, and methodical Rick Sullivan had already identified the perfect messenger. But first, I needed intelligence. Real intelligence, not social media speculation. The wedding invitation arrived at my Austin office 2 weeks later, forwarded by the mail service I'd maintained for exactly these kinds of loose ends. Thick paper, gold embossing, expensive enough to make a statement about money they didn't actually have. The venue was Hill Country Resort, a place that charged premium rates for hill country views and Austin proximity. Inside the invitation was a handwritten note that made me laugh out loud in my empty Charleston office. "Rick, hope you can see what a real man looks like. Some of us don't settle for ordinary. Looking forward to showing everyone what happiness actually means." M&B. My assistant Jenny had forwarded the invitation with a note of her own. "Your ex-wife sent this to your work address. Thought you should know, in case it affects any client relationships." Jenny was protective that way, understanding that personal drama could spill over into professional reputation if you weren't careful. I read Monica's note 3 times, each reading revealing another layer of deliberate cruelty. She hadn't just invited me to witness her happiness. She'd designed the invitation to humiliate me, to force me to either attend and suffer publicly or decline and appear bitter. It was psychological warfare dressed up as wedding etiquette. But Monica's little power play gave me an idea. She wanted me to see what a real man looked like. I'd make sure everyone at that wedding saw exactly what Brandon Hayes looked like when his financial house of cards collapsed in real time. Through my business network, the same network Monica used to call obsessive, I had contacts throughout Texas and the Southwest. 25 years of industrial equipment sales puts you in touch with banks, credit unions, property management companies, construction firms, and real estate professionals. People who understand the difference between assets and liabilities, between actual wealth and borrowed appearances. It took exactly 4 phone calls to paint a complete picture of Brandon's financial disaster. The first call went to Danny Rodriguez, a commercial banker in San Antonio who specialized in construction and development loans. "Danny, I need a professional favor. Background check on a real estate guy named Brandon Hayes, operates around Austin area." Danny called back within 6 hours. "Rick, this guy's credit report reads like a horror novel. Multiple bankruptcies, defaulted loans, current debt exceeding over $247,000 spread across 17 different creditors. His house flipping business is hemorrhaging money faster than a punctured fuel tank." The second call went to Maria Santos, a property manager who handled foreclosure cleanups for several major lenders. "Maria, you ever run across Brandon Hayes in your foreclosure work?" Her laugh was answer enough. "That fool has 3 properties in various stages of foreclosure right now. Claims he's an investment consultant, but he couldn't invest his way out of a wet paper bag." Call number 3 connected me with Tommy Chen, a private investigator who specialized in financial fraud cases. Tommy's report arrived by encrypted email within 48 hours. Credit card statements showing luxury purchases funded by cash advances, lease agreements for vehicles he couldn't afford, and loan applications with income figures that didn't match any legitimate business records. But the fourth call delivered the golden nugget that made me smile for the first time since Monica's Facebook announcement. I'd contacted Rebecca Walsh, a private lending specialist who dealt with high-risk borrowers throughout Central Texas. "Rick, you're asking about Brandon Hayes? That idiot just took a $50,000 personal loan from one of my clients to pay for his wedding. 18% interest, 6-month balloon payment. Says he's expecting a big real estate commission to cover it. 18% interest on $50,000 meant Brandon would owe nearly $55,000 in 6 months, assuming he could make the monthly payments until then. For a man whose legitimate income appeared to be zero, that wedding loan was essentially financial suicide with a boutonniere. I compiled everything into a comprehensive file: bank statements, court documents, loan applications, credit reports, foreclosure notices, and photographs of the 3 properties Brandon claimed to own but couldn't actually afford. All public record, all perfectly legal to obtain, all absolutely damning when assembled into a coherent narrative. The picture that emerged was exactly what I'd suspected from the beginning. Brandon Hayes was a financial fraud wrapped in a designer's suit, funded by other people's money and maintained through increasingly desperate borrowing. He wasn't building wealth, he was building debt faster than he could hide it. Monica had traded a man who paid his bills for a man who couldn't pay his own. She'd chosen excitement over security, flash over substance, borrowed luxury over earned stability. And now, surrounded by 150 wedding guests and social media cameras, she was about to discover the true cost of that choice. But I still needed the right delivery method. The information was devastating, but it needed to reach the right person at the right time for maximum impact. I wasn't going to show up at the wedding like some bitter ex-husband seeking revenge. That would make me look desperate and vindictive, exactly the image Monica wanted to paint of me. Then I researched the wedding details Monica had posted across her social media accounts. Hill Country Resort, Saturday afternoon ceremony, reception immediately following, 150 guests, seated dinner, live band, the full Austin Society wedding production. Wedding coordinator, Dorothy Martinez. Dorothy Martinez had been planning Austin weddings for 15 years. Her LinkedIn profile showed impressive credentials: event management degree from UT, member of the Texas Wedding Professionals Association, testimonials from clients praising her attention to detail and discretion. More importantly, according to her company website, she believed couples deserved to start marriages with complete honesty and transparency. Perfect. I called Dorothy's office on a Thursday morning, identifying myself as Monica's ex-husband and explaining that I had important information about the groom that the bride should know before making a lifetime commitment. Her voice was cautious but professional when she agreed to meet me for coffee. Dorothy turned out to be a woman in her 50s with the kind of calm efficiency that comes from managing other people's most stressful days for years. She listened without interrupting, while I explained the situation, keeping her face carefully neutral as I outlined Brandon's financial deception. "Mr. Sullivan," she said when I finished, "I understand you might have concerns, but I can't just interfere with my client's wedding based on allegations from an ex-husband." Her tone was diplomatic but firm. I slid the folder across the table. "These aren't allegations, Ms. Martinez. These are public records, bankruptcy filings, foreclosure notices, loan applications with falsified income statements. The man Monica is marrying tomorrow owes $247,000 to 17 different creditors and just borrowed $50,000 at 18% interest to pay for their wedding." Dorothy opened the folder and began reading. I watched her expression change from professional skepticism to genuine concern to something approaching alarm. "Mr. Sullivan, some of these documents, the foreclosure notice is dated last week. The wedding loan application shows income of $180,000 annually, but these bank statements show no legitimate income source. Ms. Martinez, you've been in this business for 15 years. How many marriages have you seen fail because one partner wasn't honest about their finances? She closed the folder and looked at me directly. Too many. Financial deception destroys more marriages than infidelity. I'm not asking you to cancel the wedding. I'm asking you to make sure Monica has all the information she needs to make an informed decision. Give her the folder 30 minutes before the ceremony. Let her choose whether to proceed with full knowledge of what she's getting into. Dorothy agreed, though I could tell the decision troubled her. Professional courtesy, she called it. Making sure the bride understood the complete picture before making a lifetime commitment. I left the folder with her, along with my contact information, then drove back to Charleston feeling something I hadn't experienced in months. Anticipation. Saturday afternoon in Charleston was perfect. 78 degrees, gentle breeze off the harbor, the kind of day that makes you grateful to be alive and far away from other people's disasters. I was sitting on my front porch, reading a book about Southern architecture and drinking sweet tea, when my phone started buzzing with notifications. First text came from an unknown number. Dude, this wedding is insane. Bride just lost it. Attached was a shaky video of what looked like a crowd of people in formal wear, standing around looking confused and uncomfortable. Second text from my old neighbor, Jim Patterson. Rick, I don't know what you did, but Monica is calling your name and crying. They stopped the wedding mid-ceremony. Third text included a clearer video. I could see Monica in her wedding dress, holding papers and shaking hands, her voice carrying across the assembled guests, even through the phone's tiny speaker. Rick did this. He sent these. Rick Sullivan did this. The camera panned to show Brandon backing away from the altar, his face pale as old newspaper. Someone in the crowd shouted, "What's in those papers?" Another voice. "Where's Rick? Is he here?" The officiant stood frozen at the podium, clearly out of his depth, while Monica waved the financial documents like evidence in a murder trial. Then came the moment that made the whole elaborate plan worthwhile. Monica's voice loud enough for every phone camera to capture. $247,000. He owes $247,000. The house we're supposed to live in? It's being foreclosed next month. His business? It's all fake. The crowd's reaction was immediate and unmistakable. Gasps, whispers, the sound of 150 people realizing they had dressed up and driven to hill country to witness a financial execution. Someone's aunt could be heard saying, "Lord have mercy." A groomsman pulled out his phone and started filming. The maid of honor stepped away from Monica like financial irresponsibility might be contagious. Brandon made his choice then. Not an explanation, not an apology, not even an attempt at damage control. He just ran. Straight down the center aisle, past the string quartet, past the ice sculpture shaped like intertwined hearts, past 150 guests holding their phones up, like paparazzi documenting a celebrity meltdown. The video showed him sprinting across the resort parking lot, dress shoes slipping on gravel, disappearing between parked cars like a man fleeing creditors, which, in a way, 17 of them were actively pursuing him. I set my phone down, took a slow sip of sweet tea, and watched a pelican dive for fish in Charleston Harbor. Monica had wanted everyone to see what a real man looked like. Mission accomplished. The calls started that evening, first from Monica herself, sobbing into the phone like someone had died. "Rick, how could you do this to me? How could you humiliate me like this in front of everyone?" I let her cry for a full minute before responding. "I didn't humiliate you, Monica. I informed you. There's a difference. Those papers, those documents, where did you get them? Public records, the kind of research you used to call paranoid when we were married. You ruined my wedding." "No," I said quietly. "I saved you from a bankruptcy." She hung up, called back 10 minutes later, her voice smaller but more desperate. "Rick, we need to talk. This is all a misunderstanding. Brandon explained everything. He's going through a rough patch, but his business is about to turn around. Monica, the man borrowed $50,000 to pay for your wedding, at 18% interest. That's not a rough patch. That's financial suicide." Silence on the line. Then, "Rick, I'm coming to Charleston. We need to talk face to face." "No, you're not. I already booked a flight. I'll be there tomorrow." "Monica, don't do this." but the line was already dead. She arrived Sunday afternoon like a tornado in designer luggage. I watched from my front porch as her rental car pulled up, a white Camry that looked modest compared to the BMW lifestyle she'd been living. She emerged wearing sunglasses that probably cost more than most people's monthly grocery budget, looking around at the quiet street with the expression of someone who'd never seen Spanish moss before. "Rick," she said, climbing the porch steps like she was approaching a witness stand. "We need to talk." I didn't stand up, didn't invite her to sit down. "Talk about what, Monica?" "About us, about what happened yesterday, about whether we can fix this mess." She pulled off her sunglasses, and I could see the hope in her eyes, the same hope she'd probably had when Brandon promised her the world. "Rick, I made a mistake. Maybe we could try again, start over." I set down my sweet tea and looked at her for a long moment, really looked at her. The woman who'd called me ordinary, paranoid, controlling. The woman who'd chosen excitement over stability, passion over partnership, borrowed luxury over earned security. "Monica, you didn't leave me for a better man. You left me for a better story. Turns out the story was fiction, and now you're holding the bill." Her face crumpled. "That's not fair, Rick. I thought he was different. I thought he could give me the life I deserved." "The life you deserved?" I stood up slowly, walked to the porch railing, and looked out at the harbor where real boats carried real cargo for real money. "Monica, you had the life you deserved. 23 years of stability, security, partnership. A man who paid his bills on time, showed up when he said he would, built something solid instead of chasing fantasies." "But Rick, please," I turned back to her. "While you were planning your fairy tale wedding with a man who couldn't afford the flowers, I was planning my actual future." I reached into my shirt pocket and pulled out a folded paper. "You want to know what a real man looks like?" She took the paper with shaking hands. Bank statement. Charleston Federal Credit Union. Account balance, $347,000. "That's my signing bonus from Apex, plus the profit from selling our house after you moved out, plus savings from 25 years of being the kind of man who reads contracts before signing them." Monica's hands trembled as she stared at the numbers. "Rick, I had no idea. I didn't know you sold the house. It wasn't your house anymore. You chose excitement over equity, remember? What if I stayed? What if we tried again?" I walked past her toward the front door. "Monica, I'm not your backup plan. I'm not your safety net. I'm not the consolation prize you collect when your first choice doesn't work out." "But we had something real. We had something real," I agreed. Past tense. "You traded it for something that looked better in Instagram photos." I opened the door. "Take care of yourself, Monica. Learn to do it without other people's money." I stepped inside and closed the door behind me. Through the window, I watched her stand on my porch for 5 full minutes, holding that bank statement like a love letter she'd never received. Finally, she walked back to her rental car, shoulders shaking with the kind of sobs that come from understanding exactly how much you've lost. The next morning, I woke early and made coffee on my front porch. The harbor was calm, reflecting the sunrise like a mirror made of gold. An osprey circled overhead, hunting with the patience that comes from knowing exactly what you're looking for. Real revenge isn't loud, isn't dramatic, isn't a scene played out for an audience. Real revenge is waking up every morning knowing you're free, while the people who tried to break you are stuck living with the mess they made. I took a slow sip of coffee, watching the sun climb higher over Charleston Harbor. Some mornings, you just sit on your porch and appreciate the quiet satisfaction of being exactly where you're supposed to be.